This video is all about deploying your first Azure virtual machine. In this video, we're going to take a look at Azure virtual machine requirements for deployment, so mainly giving you the insights what's happening under the hood. Starting from some bullet points. What is required to allowing you to deploy Azure virtual machines is the first topic I'm going to cover, followed by showing you how to deploy an Azure virtual machine from the portal. And then ending this section by showing you how easy it is to manage your virtual machine after deployment. Let me start with walking you through some of the requirements and key aspects of what it takes to actually deploy an Azure virtual machine. First of all, you need to have admin rights to the portal, as well as having admin rights to the Azure resource group in which you want to deploy the virtual machine. As I explained to you in the previous video, Azure resource groups are the logical boundary for creating your Azure resources. From an administrative security perspective, it is integrating with Azure Active Directory, which by the way is one of the topics that I will cover in another section in this video series. You can provide or even limit admin rights to specific Azure resource groups. And even if you want, not only on resource group level, but also on individual resources within a resource group. Once you have your resources defined, or you're going to create your resource group, the next setting you have to provide is the operating system image, which I already explained to you in the previous demos. The operating system image can be about any current Windows operating system, as well as a good list of supported Linux operating systems are available in the meantime. Besides just providing the operating system image, it could well be a fully pre-configured application server, including the application itself besides the operating system. Now, once you have your operating system defined, you can complete your template parameters, providing a virtual machine size, username and password for the VM, and then the deployment takes off. And then the deployment itself can be monitored and viewed from the viewing section, the notification area that I talked about. Once the virtual machine has been defined, depending on the machine characteristics, it takes about, on average, 5 to 10 minutes before you can log on to the virtual machine if you allowed remote management from the deployment process. So in short, when you start a deployment from a template, these are the minimal machine requirements that you need to specify. First of all, it starts with providing basic information regarding a unique virtual machine name. Unique within your Azure subscription, as well as providing a user account and password, which must follow the operating system security requirements for passwords. Then you specify the Azure resource group, which can be a new one or can be integrated in an already existing one, and then defining the Azure data center location, also known as your Azure region. After the basics are done, you define your virtual machine size, which, as you already know from previous sections, refers to machine characteristics like CPU, memory, disk capacity, based on the specific t-shirt sizes. In the last step, you define your overall machine settings, specifically from an Azure perspective, like what Azure storage account you want to use, an Azure virtual network, if you want to activate specific Azure extensions, like virtual machine extensions, and then flagging if you want to use high availability or not, where high availability for virtual machines will be covered in the next video. Now with that, I think it's a good idea to jump over to the Azure portal and showing you how easy it is to deploy your first Azure virtual machine. From the Azure portal, I'm mainly talking about Azure Resource Manager in this scenario. I'm going to start with deploying a virtual machine. So I select virtual machines in the portal, and from here I get access to the marketplace, which I already covered in the introduction, and I'm going to keep it easy for now, deploying a basic Windows Server operating system VM. Now when I select my Windows Server from the list of available images and confirming my creation steps, it's basically jumping over to the basics section. I provide the name packed VM1 based on a certain disk type, and then entering an administrative username and a complex password. If it's not even complex enough, it will already provide me a warning. Then I select my subscription, creating a new resource group in this scenario and defining my Azure data center location. Which brings me to step 2, from where I have to select my virtual machine size. Some of these are already pre-populated. Now I'm going to give it a couple of seconds to show you that it also provides you average pricing information available. Or even if you want, you can browse to the full list of virtual machine sizes. There we go. This is what the full list looks like. Now there are some limitations based on the fact that I'm using a trial subscription here. So let me start with a cheaper virtual machine where the cost is on average $87 US. This is the cost for a 24/7 running virtual machine. And then in the last step 3, I have to define some additional settings like the creation of a storage account, the virtual network, the virtual subnet, providing a public IP address, which allows me to natively directly connect with the virtual machine using remote desktop from the outside world, and creating network security groups where I can define and configure my specific network group security settings. Now in this example, since I'm only using and allowing direct RDP connection, I will create a small rule for that, allowing RDP port 3389. After having gone through the configuration of my virtual machine settings, it will provide me a summarized overview. All my settings are being validated and the deployment kicks off. If I then jump here to my notification area, I can follow the deployment of my virtual machine. As you can see, deployment has started. So again, it gives me a summary of all the settings that I have defined, and some of them were automatically generated, nothing to worry about for now. And then here all the way down at the bottom, it will show me the operational details, actually step-by-step execution of the deployment process. When I refresh this portal a couple of times, it will show me that in the meantime the storage account has been created, and it should be followed by deploying the network components. Now we're at the stage where most of the storage is okay, the virtual networks have been created, and it's starting to deploy my virtual machine itself. After only a couple of minutes, my deployment is successfully completed. All the steps are marked as green. And also from the notification area here at the top, it tells me that deployment was succeeded. So when I now go back to my virtual machine, I can see that my packed VM1 is successfully running, and it's also allowing me to connect by using an RDP session here. I'm logging on with my admin account that I created, and I can successfully connect to my virtual machine. This basically completes my demo on deploying the first virtual machine in your Azure subscription. Nothing too specific, nothing too complex, I think. And then as a wrap-up of this section, you'll learn about virtual machine requirements, what it takes to deploy the virtual machine and how to manage it by allowing the rule within the network security group settings and executing an RDP session from the portal. Obviously, if it's a Linux machine, then you would also have the option to use SSH, which basically provides you direct remote management to the machine. In the next video, I'm going to walk you through more complex deployments of virtual machine architectures using Azure templates.